Just a little insight on what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for sure because, you go back to Kyle Shanahan specifically in 2017, if you remember, he signed a 6-year deal at that point. So his original deal would have taken him through last season, 2022, but after the 2019 season, when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl, he had 3 years added on in his last extension. So basically, he had, going into this year, he had 3 years left on that extension from 2020, basically, the early part of 2020. And so he was already signed through 2025. So any kind of an extension beyond that, and it doesn't look like the terms have been announced or reported on to this point, but we're basically talking about it got to be at least 2 or 3 more.
Right.
So that would mean that Kyle Shanahan, and we'll see if John Lynch's deal is in line with Shanahan's exactly, but that would mean, at least for Shanahan, that he's under contract for another 5 or 6 years from right this second in 2023. And why not? I mean, this team looks like they're primed to make another deep run, Goo. And they look like they found their quarterback, and that they've been able to turn the worm here for 3 of these last 4 years. And I think Jed York is rewarding the stability and the overall success that the 49ers have had here in 3 of these last 4 years.
You know what, JD? I was in the house. I sent you a text. I was in the house, and I was just reminded at the concepts and the space that the Niners work in, and the fact that Kyle, who I nitpick, ain't won the big one yet, looks at Deebo Samuel and has a vision of him, Brandon Ayuk, and what they put together. So, JD, you just said what I was going to ask you. This is deserving, and I believe offensively there's no other team that plays like the Niners to where you could throw it in the flat to Deebo Samuel on 3rd and 15 and get it. Like, do you see how rare or unique Kyle's offense is? Because I do, and it was apparent to me yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it each and every Sunday. I think going back to the contract component of all of this, I mean, this really is a vote of confidence from Jed York to Kyle Shanahan and to John Lynch, in that, hey, go get it done. You guys are being taken care of regardless of what happens. It's an ultimate pay it forward kind of a move, which I think is interesting, and it is different from if you go back 10 years ago when the 49ers were in the Super Bowl and they lost, and Jim Harbaugh didn't get an extension back then, and then things got weird and he wound up out the door, and the franchise was in disarray for a few years there until Shanahan and Lynch came in and took things over, and things got flipped back around. So I think it really is an ultimate statement of confidence that the process by which the 49ers have operated under Shanahan as the head coach and the number one person in charge of everything, with Lynch right as his side and the other people they've assembled in that front office, are going about things, Steiny, in the right way enough to where, I don't want to say this because this is going to enrage everybody. Like, they might not win it, but it's in essence, Jed York is saying, hey, you might not win it, but you're running everything to a point where you're not going anywhere even if you don't win it this year. Like, you're going to have multiple years to keep trying to do it. So I think it's a hell of a statement being made by Jed York and the 49ers ownership to Shanahan and Lynch.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's our 49ers insider. Let's talk about Lynch real quick, because I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. I remember Boomer Esiason talking about how he was looking to possibly get back into television. Obviously, this extension is going to take him, deep into the 2020s. Has something philosophically changed as far as you know, or why does it feel like John Lynch is going to be here for a while now?
Yeah, I don't know if it's philosophical, Steiny, but I do think there was a belief or a feeling around him, and I know we talked about this over the years with Bob Myers, right? The whole notion that Bob wasn't a lifer. Bob was a
Right.
great general manager, knew his role, loved doing the job. There were maybe parts of it that got more difficult over time, but he wasn't going to be around for the next 10 years. And I think the belief was that John Lynch was much more in line with Bob Myers, right? That there was going to be a point at which enough was going to be enough, and it was extremely lucrative to go do some of these other jobs in the media or in television where you could make just as much money or more money and maybe not have the stress that comes along with it. But I think Lynch's willingness to stay on and continue this thing really shows that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are on the same page in a big-time way and believe in each other, I think, in a big-time way to where, Lynch loves what they've done and loves what they continue to do. And I think maybe he is more in love with the gig and everything that comes along with it than maybe he was a few years ago. And I think that's a testament to the consistent success, but it's also, I think, a testament to the people within the organization, from those above Lynch and Shanahan to the players themselves and what they've built. I think John Lynch senses something really special with the 49ers organization that maybe he didn't fully realize a couple of years ago, and now he wants to continue to be a part of it for years and years to come.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. If you've just joined us, the 49ers have announced they've extended the contracts of general manager John Lynch and head coach Kyle Shanahan.
JD, I got a theory. Tell me what you think. So a lot was made with the Trey Lance failure in regard to what he was going to be for the Niners. He's on another team. We're taking calls even after a great win about, hey, we need to see more from Brock Purdy. But my theory is now, hearing this, that they're in the clouds in a good way of, I feel like York knows Brock is going to be their future quarterback for umpteen years. They're going to be a player. He likes his roster. And here's the reward for the people in the back that might think, you guys, that pick of Trey Lance set us back. I think this just has a lot to do with what they believe in Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I mean, if Brock Purdy proves himself to be a great quarterback, then it really doesn't matter what Trey Lance was or is or wasn't or may never become. Like, if Purdy is good enough, then, and this team can continue to win at a high level, then it really at some point doesn't matter. I think as far as Purdy's play and the conversation about to me, these last two games on Purdy specifically have been, if last night was a bad game, or if the two games this week, if the Rams game and the Giants game were poorer games for Brock Purdy, that's a hell of a floor, right? Like, that's a hell of a high floor for Brock Purdy. And I'm not saying that means the ceiling is higher, but he didn't play well in the first half last night.
Yeah.
But you look up, and at the end of the night, it's a blowout. He throws for 2 touchdowns. He's 25 of 37 for 310. Maybe he got a little lucky on the interception luck again. There was a couple that could have been, and maybe the conversation changes if some of those interceptions that could have been turn into ones that actually happen. But I think there's a confidence that the 49ers have in Brock Purdy based on the fact that if these last two games are more on the downside, that they're going to be in really good shape because they've still been able to be more than good enough with everything the 49ers have to win games. And last night turned into a convincing win. And really in the fourth quarter, I mean, the Rams were in the game for sure, but in the fourth quarter, it never really felt like the Niners were going to have to sweat that game out, even though Purdy had some misses.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's our 49ers insider. I want to ask you a little bit about Jed York and the perception of Jed York. And the perception was that when Harbaugh was here, he talked too much, and he probably would tell you he had to, and he was too involved. And there seems to be a perception now, Jed York has changed. He's behind the scenes now. Can you speak to whether there's a lot of truth to that or it might be overblown?
It might be a little overblown, but I think he has in the the moves that he's made. I mean, I go back to giving Shanahan the contract extension after they lost the Super Bowl, when that was really where the hang-up started with Harbaugh, going back to when they lost the Super Bowl. And look,
right.
very, very different personalities, but I think that's the adjustment. It's the, rather than maybe putting blame on Harbaugh for not getting him his ring and having things get weird, when Shanahan ends up losing the Super Bowl, it's like, no, this is exactly the guy that we want. I'm gonna give him the deal. I'm not gonna let him get into the back end of his contract remaining and then have another. I mean, think about it. If Shanahan doesn't get the contract extension and then comes back in 2020 and they go 6-10, and at that point, he's got 2 years left on the deal going into 21. They almost missed the playoffs in 21. I mean, I think that was a real turning point, or it could have been a real turning point if they had basically said, yeah, you know what, thanks for making the Super Bowl, but you gotta keep proving it, or you gotta get over the hump. Like, I think that would have been a fork in the road to where things could have gotten weird. And I think that showed the growth in Jed York that he was committed to. And look, let's be honest. The end of Harbaugh was a mess. That wasn't entirely on Jed York, but I think a lot of it was on Jed York. And the years in between Jim Harbaugh and Kyle Shanahan were just abominable. I mean, they were just a complete embarrassment. And Jed York was right at the forefront of that. So I do think he's taken more of a backseat. I do think he's hired football people, and that doesn't mean that he's not involved in private conversations and doesn't have, those that are in charge don't have to talk to him or whatever. And I do think he will at some point, if the Niners win it, go on the ultimate victory lap tour. But you know what? So the hell what if you do it after you win it? I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with that. But I think he's exuded a patience and a maturity with the way that he's handled Shanahan and Lynch's tenure that maybe it was too much to ask for a guy that was, in charge of a football team in his early 30s. And as he got into his early 40s, he's evolved like we all do.
JD, it's incredible. I've always said when teams have releases like this, even if it's a player, there's just a certain pride component to it. Like, you know what? Business is good. And it is good. The Niners have been close. But now you talk about building a bully. I think that's what the Niners are on the field. We saw that last night. But as far as Kyle Shanahan and his uniqueness and creativity, you got to think the players, the next time they step on the field, know that their coach and general manager are going nowhere. They're primed. Jay, I hate to put you on the spot, but I told Steiny all day, not trying to be a cheerleader. I know it's early, but what you're seeing from this Niner team, I mean, is it even crazy to say we could see them playing January football?
Of course, no. That's not crazy to say they're playing. They should 100%. If they're not a playoff team this year, then something went horrifically wrong. I mean, I think the standard is even beyond that. To me, the standard is get back to an NFC Championship game or get to the Super Bowl. I mean, they're one of 3 favorites in the NFC. I mean, it's them and it's Philly and it's Dallas. And you could make the case the Niners are playing the best of the 3, although Dallas has looked pretty good in their first 2 games. And Philly, it's been in their first 2 games, it's been up and down a little bit. We'll see, although they are 2-0, but up and down in those individual games. But no, I think the Niners are a favorite. Like, I don't buy this notion that nobody thinks the Niners are top tier. The Niners are top tier. Like, I don't think there's too many people in the country that think they can't win the Super Bowl this year. Now, hey, if you end up playing Pat Mahomes or somebody, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, somebody like that in the Super Bowl, maybe you don't get it done. But no, I think everybody believes that the 49ers are one of maybe 6 to 8 teams that have a shot. And to this point, I think you could make the case that they've looked better than anybody.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So far, it's early, but I would agree with you. I think most people would. Before we let you go, JD, Guru's upset that the Warriors aren't going to sign Dwight Howard. Give him some consolation, please.
Jay, there were so many, before you answer, contrasting reports. Over here, one hand, somebody said he's working out with Draymond and Chris Paul, and it's pretty much done. And then on the other, don't take it too serious. Where were you when all this was happening? Did you think it was imminent?
I thought it was legitimately possible.
Okay,
I didn't think it was imminent.
That. Right.
I don't think anybody. And I will say this, and Goo, you may disagree. And
Go ahead.
You can come at it. I don't think anybody, and maybe I missed something. I don't think anybody reported that it was imminent, or I don't think anybody. I think there were reports that it had gone down the path of met with this group and met with it, but that didn't mean imminent. That meant even the Jason Dumas report.
Yeah, I was just okay.
But even his report where it's the veteran signed off on. Well, if the veteran signed off on it, I'm not disputing the report. That doesn't mean it's the fact that the veteran signed off on it doesn't mean it's imminent. And Jason didn't say that, so I'm not coming down his road. But that, like, to me, it was. Would the front office want to really give that 14th spot to Dwight outright when they had been so adamant that they wanted some flexibility on it? And I think that's obviously what you heard today in the reporting is they preferred the flexibility. And then to be honest, my 2 cents, I can't see Steve Kerr signing off on it. Even if the veteran players were cool with it, to me, them being cool with it just kicks it back up to the front office and to Kerr and I think they need another wing more than they need Dwight Howard at this point. So I would have understood if they had made the move, but the thing that I keep going back to is what's Dwight Howard going to be like when he's playing, 3 minutes a half once every 6 games, and not playing at the end of the game ever, probably. So, at that point, because the Warriors don't finish games that way, even against Embiid and Jokic and all of that. So I just don't think. I think the thought, the idea of Howard isn't the reality of Howard in how they would have used him if he had been on the roster and how content maybe he would have been to be on the roster in that limited role. Now, that being said, maybe they wind up signing him later. But I think they need to protect the flexibility. I love flexibility. I think they need to protect the flexibility and have more of a legitimate competition for a wing spot because I still think they're short a wing. I think they're short a 3-4 player that is a veteran that provides a little bit of an insurance policy if maybe Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga can't play a lot regularly at the level or can't play in playoff games still at the level that maybe the fan base thinks that they're already ready to.
Good stuff, JD.
Hey,
appreciate your time, man. And real quick, what do you got going tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be real good. We're going to be out at Friedman's Appliance. It's going to be in Pleasant Hill. It's their fall clearance sales event. It's going on throughout the weekend. Saturday and Sunday, and I'll be out there. We're going to be broadcasting. It's me and Alan Stiles from 12 to 3. So, yeah, you can take advantage of the factory direct pricing and all that great stuff. Noon to 3 tomorrow, Friedman's Appliance, JD and Alan Stiles. Stop by and say hi. Now, Steiny, we've done one or two of these in the past on the Warriors This Week show, and I've been out at a few of them, so it should be great and a wonderful opportunity to see some of our great listeners.
Good stuff, Jay.
Appreciate it, JD. Have a good one, buddy.
All right, you got it.
All right, that's John Dickinson, and you can catch him tomorrow with Alan Stiles, as he said, 12 to 3, Friedman's Appliance.